Jack in the Box, Ice Cube.
Own munchie meal with the return of the fan favorite. Oh, this isn't a new sandwich. It's a chicken tater melt.
Ice Cube orders a sandwich at his diner, but he is stopped dead in his tracks, overhearing two cashiers allegedly voicing complaints about the owner. While Ice Cube has deftly kept his life away from the media, his reputation as one of the biggest rappers ever keeps him in the spotlight. Insiders now claim a cashier exchange that caught the 56-year-old off guard and led to a memorable moment. What exactly did he hear them say? How did he react to the situation? Join us as we discuss Ice Cube's reaction to the two cashiers' complaints. Cashiers raise a quiet storm. Unhappy members of staff are no new concept in a business, no matter how well run it is or who owns it. And if there is a man who knows this better than anyone, it is Ice Cube O'Shea Jackson Sr. While the rap legend has often played fast and loose with the media when it comes to his private life, including his kids and his businesses, insiders eventually dug up a reaction from members of staff in his diner, particularly two cashiers on the counter, who could not stop talking about the owner's unfair treatment toward them. Ice Cube has always been a man crazy about the importance of doing the hard part of the grind, regardless of how long it takes to achieve success. And his 2008 track, Jack in the Box,
I said my head is so big they call me Jack in the Box. Don't talk about money.
Was a perfect description of his mentality about putting in the hard yards and respecting the hustle and grind. Hence, it is not too far-fetched every time that he gets the compliment as one of the most respectable hustlers in the entertainment industry, who cuts across all phases of entertainment, including movies and comedy.
Hey, Nickaroo.
You. Where you been, man?
However, after many years of staying at the pinnacle of entertainment, he has rebranded himself as an astute businessman, making appearances on podcasts and talking about what it means to grind and hustle. This assertive image that he had built of himself as a hard worker and astute businessman makes it even more difficult when sources close to the rapper referenced a showdown that almost blew up the roof of the rapper's diner recently. Although the 56-year-old rapper had often kept personal information airtight and allegedly has his team on a leash about the type of information that they give out, a deal with one of the biggest fast food chains in America, called Jack in the Box, which has been around since the early 50s, cannot really be hidden under the radar. In 2024, Ice Cube and Jack in the Box came up with the idea to have a munchie meal that came in the rapper's name, Cube's Munchie Meal, which featured a combination of a chicken tater melt, curly fries, a taco, mini churros, and a Sprite. While Jack in the Box is a rather old establishment with its own chain store franchise, insiders report that Ice Cube had used the idea of having his own meal from the fast food chain as a designated front meal for his own diner, somewhere on the West Coast, where he grew up. Although he had allegedly kept it quiet for years, the inside track of the recent cashier struggles and Ice Cube's reaction is on the verge of creating a meltdown. But what exactly created this silent beef between Cashiers and the rapper? Cashier's complaint. Sources close to the rapper have always described him as having a sixth sense for business, human relations, and having the insane ability to handle beef, whether by retaliation or a diss track like he had done with his music over the years, or by simple discourse to puncture the beef at the veins and let the bad blood out. However, insiders discuss a meaner approach to his recent problems with Cashiers in one of his diners on the West Coast, as they had no idea about his status as the owner. Sources close to the situation reported that the diner had been racking up a really poor reputation over the course of its creation, from poor service to customers to gossip about the anonymous owner who never comes to visit, and rumors of the diner being a possible front for more disturbing activities, which might even include inciting some sort of black revolution, citing the menu-dominant Ice Cube Munchie Meal as the perfect calling card for young black men to make up the diner's customer base. According to insiders, Ice Cube found it rather far-fetched to imagine that a simple diner with his Jack in the Box meal version was enough to create such despicable rumors. Insiders suggest that he was disappointed to see that a simple fast food business had been seen by some as an art of war or revolution, And he found it even stranger that the cashiers at the counter were at the center of these rumors. To Ice Cube, this did not sound like his diner. According to insiders, he had created the diner as a throwback to the life that he enjoyed as a teenager, which he often wrote about in his songs and movies like Friday, featuring one of the best black actors to have ever graced the silver screen, Chris Tucker.
What's up, man?
What's up?
How you at work?
Got fired yesterday.
For real?
While he had enjoyed the anonymity that came with the diner since he created it, inside sources believe that his choice to visit the diner without revealing that he owned the place not only came from a willingness to find out the truth about the daily ongoings at his own diner, but with a deeper desire to confront hearsays and perception itself. He wanted to hear directly from the cashiers how they treated customers and how they sent customers who were willing to listen into a frenzy about the possibility of the diner being a revolution stand to flip the bird at white people, especially with Cube's munchy meal headlining the menu. Just how revealing was his choice to visit the diner, and what exactly did he find out from his visit? Ice Cube's visit to the diner. It's not every day that a huge celebrity and legend of the rap game like Ice Cube walks into some diner on the West Coast. But according to insiders, Ice Cube's visit to the diner ruffled a lot of feathers, especially with mumbles and murmured questions along the lines of, "What's a man like that doing here? Surely he could afford something more fancy." However, Ice Cube wasn't the man to let words or nonverbals deter him from finding out what exactly was holding his establishment with a knife to the throat and threatening a possible revenue slash. According to insiders, he walked in with the usual NWA gangsta rapper look, but without the usual entourage when he moves around. Insiders clocked him walking into the establishment and heading straight for the counter, and he could be overheard ordering a sandwich. As expected, insiders reported that the reaction from customers in the diner set off a serious chain reaction, especially with an increase in sales and the consistent purchase of the Cube Munchy meal. At first, it seemed almost like Ice Cube had made this trip to the West Coast for no reason at all. While his presence definitely increased sales and created some real buzz around the diner, he had come there for a different reason, something rather darker and negative enough to have his spidey senses tingling. According to an insider, after Ice Cube had spent some time at the diner and was preparing to leave with his sandwich, a smile, and some sense of belief that the problems had been exacerbated, it was just another much ado about nothing. But for some reason, sources reported that he had chosen to stay within earshot of the two cashiers at the counter while he munched on the hilt of that sandwich. And just before he left, the words crept out of their mouth like daggers to his heart. Inisters claims that he heard words along the lines of, "I heard the owner is some black dude who never comes around to say hi to the workers." And they all but claim to wonder how silly this owner feels to not be here when Ice Cube walked into his diner. It was an obvious burden of neglect that the cashiers had been nurturing forever, with feelings that they were just the owner's cash cow and simply milked them and fed them enough to keep them working for him, but with no physical acknowledgement of their efforts. Insiders who watched the scene unfold reported that Ice Cube hit the popular Ice Cube furrowed brows. To some, the facial expression seemed like a permanent state of, huh. According to insiders, surprise and disappointment met at the middle of his furrowed brows, as the 56-year-old had never before then been chastised for the businesses that he ran, especially by his own workers, who had no idea of his identity at the time. Insiders reportedly saw him look back with a smirk, puzzled and caught in two minds, juggling the ideas of revealing his identity as owner or keeping it anonymous and working out the weaknesses. But did their criticism only stop at the owner's indirect rule? The cashier's rampage. While Ice Cube reportedly stayed glued to the spot, finding it hard to believe what he had been listening to, insiders reported that he chose to stay a while longer to see the consequences of their feelings about this absent owner on the customer base. At first, the reception was brilliant, but insiders believed that it could be chalked down to having Ice Cube in the building, hence the need to impress him and hope that he comes back, but possibly with other stars. and give the diners some more taste of that Hollywood black excellence, and possibly living members of the NWA record label, like Dr. Dre and MC Ren. However, he waited a little longer, hoping to see something else. But his presence was more of a deterrent than he had thought it would be to how the place really worked, when the workers did not feel the need to impress a rap legend in their restaurant. According to insiders, Ice Cube, unsatisfied with the information he had gotten, chose to lean into his creative strength, and together with his team, they came up with a brilliant plan to reintegrate him into the environment, but this time not as Ice Cube. Insiders reported that he left the restaurant with only one thing on his mind: a return. According to a source close to the 56-year-old, hearing the cashiers discuss the owner like some Nazi who only furthered his agenda using people without any form of recognition had created a huge void inside him, where everyone great feeling goes to die. The void existed and could only ever be shut or repaired with more information on the daily workings of the diner, and he was going to stop at nothing to get it. The plan was simple. Insiders report that he had his team dress him down to a pair of jeans, a baseball hat that almost covers his face, and a dark shade to keep the mystery going. According to sources closer to the situation, he went back to the diner just a couple of days after his first visit, so he took a friend from his team with him, who allegedly helped to place the order, meaning that he did not have to have any verbal contact with anyone, as that could have given him up. Speaking of plans and ruses, some feel that it is Sun Tzu's Art of War coded, reflecting the know thy enemy, know thyself strategy, and Ice Cube and his team executed it perfectly. Insiders believed that what he would witness was going to be enough to disillusion him about the real problem in the diner and reshape his perspective on how to deal with his staff. But how much data did he gather from his new reconnaissance mission to the diner? Ice Cube's stealthy return. The cloak and dagger operation to find out more about his establishment was set off just 2 days after his first visit. According to insiders, it was barely a strange feeling for the 56-year-old to pretend to be someone he wasn't. As a matter of fact, he saw it like another movie, where he was playing another character, reminiscent of an undercover cop gathering data. It was a role he had played in a huge action comedy franchise like Ride Along 1 and 2, alongside Kevin Hart, who featured as his partner on the job.
Do again. You want another one? Because he's crazy. I can't handle this.
I'm crazy.
I can't handle this. It's out of my hand.
Although a movie set and real-life situations are barely comparable, insiders report that it was a good start for him to set the stage and pay attention to the cashiers at the counter. While he sat there, at first, in an uncomfortable silence with his clandestine partner, and sipped his coffee with one hand while grabbing a bite of sandwich with the other, he had a clear view of the counter so he could see how the transactions worked on a day-to-day basis. According to insiders, he anticipated every move and followed every discussion seriously as he sat within earshot, close enough to the counter to hear a pin drop. But in his case, he heard more than a pin drop. He heard the weight of work, running the cashiers to the ground, and saw how they lashed out at every opportunity they had at a customer who dared to get on their nerves. Sources close to him believe that watching the experiences put him through an unsettling and rather disturbing feeling. He watched the cashiers giving no room for some flexibility with customers, and were only interested in conversations about the owner's consistent absence and unsettling possibility that he might be inciting a racial war, citing the Ice Cube much meal as the perfect fuel to ignite it. Although he had finally found the answers he sought, he stuck around more, looking to see what happened next, and to his surprise, the cashier who had been complaining of indiscipline on the owner's part was also guilty of some rather extremely poor work practices. Insiders claim that Ice Cube had watched one of the cashiers chewing gum so loudly that a deaf man could hear it. Yet, the 56-year-old sat there cool as ice, figuring out his next move as he ate his sandwich. Insiders claimed that he watched the scenes unfolding in front of him forlornly, looking hopelessly at the counters as he saw these young girls going against everything that he stood for as a young black man in his heyday, whose music rallied support for the grind and hustle. He had so much respect for real hustlers who do their jobs faithfully without thinking too much about the downsides of the job and only look far ahead into the future. For some context, in an interview, he claimed that real businesses only survive if the owner is willing to risk it all and be assured enough to go on for 5 years without making any money as profit. But just as much as he saw the disappointment, he was not willing to push the envelope enough for a confrontation. But just how badly must he feel watching his Jack in the Box headlined Munch Meal Diner go up in PR flames with his cashiers being the masked crusaders behind it? Jack in the Box. According to an insider, Ice Cube's Jack in the Box meal remained in consistent sales in this hidden diner of his. However, his real fear for the possibility of his diner's reputation going up in flames stems from the difficulty that he had in securing the deal in the first place. How did a black man from Compton become a part of a fast food chain as old as Jack in the Box? Jack in the Box has long been a staple in the United States, especially in California. The fast food chain had America in a chokehold since the mid-50s. Hence, it was only normal that kids in the 50s through to the 70s had all had that special bite of some of the best meal combos that the fast food chain had to offer. Speaking of 70s and 80s kids, Ice Cube was definitely a part of that. Hence, his affection for the meals from the company. While that might have been just a solid guess about the needs for a child in the 80s, at 39 years old in 2008, Ice Cube created one of his hottest tracks at the time, Jack in the Box, gleefully name-checking the fast food meal he enjoyed as a child and name-dropping the company in the same breath. Talk about free PR. However, to Ice Cube, that was just a respect to the culture and the meals he enjoyed eating as a child, and definitely still does. Fast forward 16 years since he had released the song, Jack in the Box came knocking on his door offering him a partnership that he could not refuse. He was being offered a way into the open market of fast food chains, where he could get the United States on the same diet that made transformed O'Shea Jackson Sr. into Ice Cube. Not only is Cube a West Coast legend, but he also grew up eating Jack in the Box and is a true fan of the brand, says Jack in the Box's chief marketing officer, Ryan Ostrom. When we dream up our ideal partners, someone like Ice Cube is exactly who we hope for. Unexpected and totally authentic, he added. Hence, his feelings were somewhat hurt, according to insiders, when he watched his diner about to go up in PR smoke. Imagine waiting 16 years to have Jack Box, the CEO of the fast food chain, reach out for a partnership to influence the brand, and watching on the cusp of going up in flames because, allegedly, 2 cashiers would rather discuss the owner than set up a propaganda campaign than keep every customer happy. But how does he react to his cashier problems? Ice Cube's reaction to his cashier-shaped problems. Having allegedly learned of the cashier's unhappiness with the anonymous owner, he needed to react, and it had to be done quickly to avoid a huge financial loss. According to sources close to him, he believed that he only had 2 options, one of which was to fire the cashiers and get new ones, or simply reveal himself as the owner. However, other questions needed answers, as both solutions created new doubts. Insiders overheard conversations between the 56-year-old and his team, who had doubts about him revealing his identity as the owner, as that could simply put him in PR hell, and he would prefer not to drown in it. Also, he imagined that his revelation as the owner might not be enough to force the composure required from the cashiers. In his view, there just wasn't really any guarantee for an upgrade in services or an improvement in the discussions about the owner. Insiders believe that Ice Cube and his teams zoomed out of an action as definitive as revealing himself as the owner, and instead chose to consider the option of firing them and replacing them with better and more experienced cashiers, and hopefully help create the environment that he had in mind when he first set up the diner anonymously. Sources close to the situation believes that Ice Cube and his team had set up the perfect plan to simply replace the problem, other than a face reveal or some letter to warn them off, as it might be articulated or manipulated as strong-arming workers into silence, and forcibly controlling their freedom of expression. According to insiders, Ice Cube leaned into the hire and fire strategy, and the two cashiers were allegedly fired from the diner and replaced by older and more experienced ones, who led right from the counter, other than debating the owner or setting up propaganda of a coming racial war and citing the Jack-in-the-Box Ice Cube Munchie meal as ground zero for the attack. Although sacking the cashiers answered the questions about the personality of the owner and how much he cares for respect and safe discussions in his establishment, some questions always got in the way when anyone asked. A perfect example revolves around the owner's experience and why he would choose a rather mid-level spot on the West Coast to have a Jack-in-the-Box Ice Cube Munchie meal-dominated menu. And yet again, it was another question about the owner that needed answers. How long has he had the obsession with representing the mid-level or humble demography? Ice Cube's obsession with the humble demography. Ice Cube's story was a real trial by fire. Hence, he has serious knowledge about what it meant to live in certain economic conditions and what it meant to run out of paychecks to afford the little pleasures of life. Prioritization, keeping up with the bills, the guns, and the substance were all a part of the Compton experience, and he had never shied away from it. In his movies, especially Friday and Straight Outta Compton, where he was represented by his son O'Shea Jackson Jr., he referenced corner stores, local diners, and neighborhood spaces where kids hung out with their friends, played basketball, or just discussed their big black dreams. Talking about fulfilling dreams, Friday was the breakout movie for Chris Tucker after his role as Smokey, a tall black man who just cannot stop running his mouth.
You need to borrow a job with your broke ass. Always trying to smoke up somebody's shit.
The success of the movie was enough to create a platform for Chris Tucker, and immediately led to open mics as a stand-up comedian and the worldwide Rush Hour franchise. While Ice Cube has not tried to confirm owning a diner somewhere around the West Coast, which wasn't too far away from each societal class, he has not denied it either. However, he has consistently given back to the community that raised him in Los Angeles, and one of his most popular establishments is Big 3 Basketball. Big 3 Basketball is a 3-on-3 basketball league that Ice Cube created with Jeff Quatinetz, an entertainment mogul. The league comprises 12 teams, with rosters of former basketball players and international basketball players. It was a surprise announcement in 2017, giving kids who are growing up in the projects a chance to realize their dreams without fear of failure. Moreover, other than basketball and entertainment, he has silently played the big brother role.
When you know they still got game. You ready to see some basketball? We miss y'all. Y'all come into our living rooms.
Using Ice Cube Ventures, his main investment arm, to help invest in businesses, which a person could eventually. This investment arm created a backing for projects that celebrated culture, technology, and even underserved communities. The company was created to help bold ideas thrive in communities where capital was mostly lacking. He had grown up in places like that in the United States. Hence, he understood how ideas could die without the economic backing to keep them in check. While Ice Cube Ventures is quite popularly known across the country, insiders claim that the 56-year-old deliberately keeps a low profile as the investment goes on. It was the classic Ice Cube silent hero move. Following his obvious consistencies and obsession with giving back to the community that raised him, and the United States as a whole, his unconfirmed ownership of the diner on the West Coast seems to fit too well into his personality to be denied. Whether he finally opens up to owning the diner or just chalks it off as an insider rumor remains to be seen. Do you think Ice Cube should have simply revealed his identity to the two cashiers rather than firing them? Should insiders continue to be on track with his diner? Would he have a choice but to simply end the cloak and dagger? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.